It is late at Graceland. Most of the house is dark, the kind of quiet that only comes after the phones stop ringing and the last car leaves the gate. Priscilla stands in the hallway with a suitcase by her side. A small pile of folded clothes sits beside it, not much for a woman who has spent almost her entire youth in this house. Her eyes move up the staircase. Lisa Marie sleeps in her room, unaware that the shape of her family is about to change. This is not one of their usual arguments. No smashed plates. No raised voices that the staff pretend not to hear. The decision has already been made. She has called for a car. She has said goodbye to the rooms in her head, one by one. The front door of Graceland has always been a symbol to her. At 17, that door meant entry into a dream, a place no other girl in her world could even imagine. Tonight, it has become something else. A test of whether she can walk out of the life everyone else thinks is perfect, and into a life where she may have to learn who she is without him. Footsteps sound from the back of the house. Elvis has just returned. He still carries the energy of the show, the nerves under the surface, the glow of stage lights that people say never fully leaves him. His hair is still styled. His stage jewelry catches what little light the hallway has. He sees the suitcase. At first he smiles. He thinks this is drama, another one of those gestures that will end with an apology and a kiss. You are not really leaving Graceland. That is the thought behind his first words. Graceland is not just an address for him. It is his kingdom. It is proof that he made it out of the poverty and pain that shaped his childhood. To watch her walk out with a suitcase is to admit that the kingdom is cracking. She does not raise her voice. She explains. The words have been rehearsed in silence for weeks. She cannot live as a shadow any longer. She cannot live according to moods she cannot predict. She cannot raise a child inside a house where she feels more like part of the set than a partner. For a moment, he tries control. He talks about the house. He reminds her of everything he has given. He speaks of the life people outside the gate would kill for. Then something shifts. The man who has always relied on charm and command reaches for something else. The mask drops. A different tone enters his voice. He tells her he knows he has hurt her. He admits he cannot promise to become the man she once hoped he would be. He confesses that he does not know how to live in this house if she walks out that door with their daughter. It is not one neat speech that history can quote word for word. People who were close to them remember the mood more than the script. What they recall is this: for the first time in a long time, Elvis Presley did not sound like the king. He sounded like a man who knew he was losing the one person who had seen him in every season of his life, from lonely soldier to fatting phenomenon. His honesty cuts deeper than the insults ever did. She has begged for that kind of truth for years. Now that it finally arrives, it comes attached to a confession that he does not know how to change. Her heart breaks because love is present in this moment. So is pain. So is the knowledge that love alone will not fix what the last decade has done to them. Her hand rests on the doorknob. Behind her is the myth the world worships. Ahead of her is a life that has no script. The voiceover steps back from this frozen moment. How did a shy 14-year-old girl in Germany end up here, standing at the edge of the most famous home in rock and roll, ready to leave it behind? How did the fairy tale of Graceland turn into a cage that even she could not live inside any longer? What did that night at the door reveal about Elvis, not as an icon, but as a man who could tell the truth when it was almost too late. To answer those questions, the story has to travel back to a young soldier in a foreign country, back to a teenager whose parents had no idea what they were agreeing to, back to the first time she walked through the gates and saw the house that would one day feel impossible to stay in and impossible to leave. The story begins far from Memphis. In 1959, the air around a small military town in Germany carries more homesickness than glamour. American families live on bases, in rented houses, in places that feel temporary. Children go to school, eat dinner, and fall asleep while their fathers serve out their years far from home. Priscilla is 14. Her stepfather is an officer in the United States Air Force. Her life is not extraordinary, at least not yet. She goes to class, does homework, listens to music, and dreams the kind of dreams most teenage girls have. One evening, a friend invites her to a gathering where American soldiers spend a few hours off duty. Music plays. People laugh. Someone mentions that Elvis Presley might be there. The name hits her like it hits almost every young person in that era. This is not just another singer. This is the man whose records travel across oceans. This is the face that fills magazines in supermarket lines back home. He walks into the room, but it is not a stage. He is 24, dressed like another soldier, yet every eye follows him. Crowds usually thrill him. This small group feels different. His mother has died the year before. Germany is a place of grief for him, as well as duty. The noise of fans does not reach him here in the same way. Someone introduces them. She is quiet, polite, almost too young for this scene. He notices that she does not rush him for a signature or scream his name. They talk. The conversation is simple at first, then stretches on longer than anyone expects. There is a tenderness in him that surprises her. There is a steadiness in her that calms him. Her parents hear about the meeting and react with worry. A global star in his 20s and their teenage daughter. That combination feels dangerous. Elvis asks to meet them. He arrives at their home in uniform, respectful and soft-spoken. He promises that he understands their concerns. He assures them that he will treat her properly, that he will include her in safe gatherings, that he will not drag her into a world that would frighten any parent. Those promises sit in the room like legal documents no one has signed. Her parents agree with conditions. Visits must be supervised. She must keep up with school. Lines must not be crossed. Months pass. The base becomes the backdrop to a strange kind of courtship. He calls. She visits his rented house, where there are records on the floor and army friends at the table. He talks about music, about his mother, about the pressure waiting for him back in America. Priscilla listens. Attention from the most famous young man in the world feels unreal. Attention from the lonely soldier in front of her feels even more powerful. Then his service ends. He returns to the United States. Her life goes back to something that looks normal from the outside. Inside her head, very little feels normal. Letters arrive. Phone calls come at odd hours. He invites her to visit America once he has settled again. The distance feels like a test she did not ask to take. Years later, invitations change shape. He does not only want visits. He wants her in Memphis. Priscilla's parents face a choice. Either they refuse and risk an angry daughter who will forever believe they stood between her and love, or they agree under strict rules and hope that they can still protect her. The move to Memphis takes place in stages. First, she stays with his father and stepmother at a house near Graceland. School continues. Her life looks from a distance like that of a quiet American teenager. Graceland exists just up the hill, almost like another planet. At certain times she visits. Each visit draws her deeper into a world she will soon call home. The first time she sees the gates up close, the myth becomes solid metal. Inside, the house stretches wide, filled with color, furniture, and the sound of a life that has grown too big for any ordinary street. Staff members move with practiced speed. They already know what he likes to eat, how he likes his clothes laid out, which rooms to keep quiet when he wants to sleep. This system reassures him. For Priscilla, it is a new set of rules to learn. Eventually, the shift becomes permanent. She moves into Graceland. At least, that is how the world describes it. In her own experience, she does not become the lady of the house overnight. She becomes another person whose schedule bends around his. There are rules. He prefers a certain style of hair and makeup. He has ideas about what a young woman on his arm should wear. He suggests changes, then expects them, then treats them as non-negotiable. Freedom shrinks in small ways first. She sleeps when he sleeps, which often means late nights and long mornings. She rarely goes out without his knowledge. She learns very quickly that certain people in his circle report everything. The house at first feels magical. Horses outside. Music inside. Friends coming and going at all hours. Over time, the magic changes temperature. Rooms that once felt exciting start to feel like sets that reset every day for the same scenes. Elvis travels for films and recording sessions. Hollywood calls constantly. He leaves in a rush and returns in dramatic fashion, often with stories, gifts, and a group of men who orbit him. Priscilla waits. Waiting becomes a skill and a burden. She waits by the phone. She waits for the sound of tires on the driveway. She waits for the version of him who is gentle and funny and present, not the version weighed down by pills and pressure. Magazines print photographs of him with beautiful co-stars. Newspapers hint at relationships that go beyond the script. Rumors reach her through friends, through whispers, through the tone in his voice when she asks too direct a question. Each rumor does a small piece of damage. Each denial or dismissal adds another layer to the distance between them. The wedding in 1967 feels, at first glance, like the moment the dream comes true. A private ceremony in Las Vegas. Flowers, cake, cameras. She wears the dress that the world will later see in photos and film clips. He stands beside her as husband, not only as star. The ceremony lasts only a few minutes. Reporters get their pictures. Friends and family gather around. Everything looks perfect. She smiles for the cameras. She also notices how carefully controlled every detail is. This is not just about love. This is about image. This is about proving that the king has a queen, that the fairy tale is complete. Marriage does not give her more power inside Graceland. If anything, the expectations grow heavier. Lisa Marie is born the following year. Elvis beams in photographs, proud and excited. He has wanted a child for a long time. He holds the baby and sings to her. He kisses his wife and promises that he will be there. Life with an infant is hard in any house. In this house, it is harder in ways that outsiders rarely understand. Nurses and staff can help with bottles and baths. They cannot help with the feeling that the man in the upstairs bedroom is drifting further away. According to later accounts, Elvis begins to struggle with the idea of intimacy with a woman who is now the mother of his child. Old beliefs about purity, about how a wife and a lover should be, start to shape his behavior. Emotional and physical distance grow between them. Nights become long. Some evenings he is himself, joking, playful, affectionate. Other nights he is shut off, surrounded by the guys, focused on television sets, music, or anything but a quiet conversation with his wife. Priscilla walks through the halls of Graceland with their daughter in her arms and feels an ache she cannot fully name yet. She has everything people think they want: wealth, a beautiful child, access to the most famous man in the world. She also has long stretches of loneliness in a house that never truly feels like it belongs to her. A thought begins to form. It appears first as a whisper, then as a sentence she almost says out loud. She wants something of her own. She starts to talk about taking classes. Dance, acting, even something as simple as more time with friends who are not part of his circle. Elvis listens, then frowns. The idea of his wife building a life outside the walls makes him uneasy. He tells her that everything she could possibly need is here. He reminds her that people outside would not treat her like a normal woman. He insists that the safest place for her and Lisa is inside Graceland. The conversation ends with a smile from him and a nod from her. The subject closes on the surface. Inside her mind, it remains very open. One evening, after another gentle refusal, she walks down the main hallway alone. Her steps take her past the front door. The handle is only a few inches of metal. The lock is simple. The distance between the inside tile and the outside stone is only a small step. That distance feels enormous. She pauses there just for a second. Her hand does not rise to the knob yet. Her eyes do not fill with tears yet. However, a new question forms in her heart. If the life everyone else envies requires her to become invisible, how long can she stay before she disappears completely? The answer to that question will one day lead her back to this same door with a suitcase at her side, and a choice that will change both of their lives forever. A new decade arrives, but the story inside Graceland does not feel new. By the early 1970s, Elvis has turned Las Vegas into his second stage home. Shows run late into the night, then flow into after-hours gatherings that mix business, friendship, and escape. Engagements stretch for weeks. Casino marquees flash his name in bright letters, while the house on the hill in Memphis waits in a deep, uneasy quiet. Priscilla stays behind more often now. Lisa needs routine. School, meals, bedtime stories, and dentist appointments do not care about show schedules or record contracts. Graceland during those absences feels almost like a museum. Staff move through their tasks, dusting, cooking, answering phones. Rooms that once burst with noise suddenly seem too large for the woman and child who live in them. Phone calls bridge the distance, yet the tone changes over time. Elvis calls from hotel suites and backstage corridors. His voice carries the buzz of adrenaline and exhaustion. He talks about songs that worked, jokes that landed, audiences that rose to their feet as if pulled by a single wire. Stories pour out, but something important is missing. There is less space for questions about her day, her thoughts, her needs. The Vegas schedule demands more than energy. It demands the body. To get through show after show, Elvis leans harder on a growing collection of prescription pills. Helpers offer them as solutions, as adjustments, as ways to sleep or wake up or feel steady enough to walk onto the stage once again. Moods swing higher and lower. Patience shrinks. Nights at home become unpredictable terrain. Priscilla learns to read the signs the moment he walks through the door. A certain tightness in his jaw means silence. A wild sparkle in his eyes means a long night ahead with the guys, television blaring and laughter echoing through the halls. The version of him who once sat with her for hours, sharing dreams and doubts, appears less often. Rumors travel faster than facts in the world around a star. Magazines splash photographs of Elvis with glamorous women, beside sensational headlines. Whispers move through Memphis and through the circle that surrounds him. Some friends hint at affairs on the road, at nights in hotel rooms where the role of faithful husband does not apply. Evidence reaches her in fragments. A lipstick mark on a collar. A story told half as a joke by someone in the group. A change in his tone when she names certain cities or certain shows. Each piece alone might be excused. Together, they paint a picture that she can no longer ignore. Pain settles into her chest like a permanent weight. For years, she has built her identity around this man and this house. Wife, mother, silent supporter, private anchor for a public storm. That identity begins to crack. The question that formed in the hallway after he dismissed her wish for a life beyond the gates becomes sharper. If her whole world revolves around someone who does not offer loyalty in return, what is left of her own self? Small acts of independence begin to appear. Priscilla signs up for dance classes. The physical movement gives her a release that the walls of Graceland never offer. Music fills the studio, yet it is not his voice. Muscles ache in a way that feels clean and earned. Karate lessons follow. Friends introduce her to an instructor named Mike Stone. Training starts as exercise, as a way to gain strength and confidence. Shifts in posture appear first. Then shifts in how she speaks about herself. For the first time in years, someone looks at her and sees more than the wife of a legend. Conversations cover books, ideas, and personal goals. Respect enters the room without being tied to fame. Emotional lines blur slowly. An encouraging word after a hard day. A shared joke that lingers in her mind long after she leaves the studio. A sense of being understood, not as an accessory, but as a person with her own storms and needs. Guilt walks beside this new connection. She knows the vows she took. She knows how it will look from the outside if anyone finds out. However, the long years of feeling unseen have left a hollow that kindness begins to fill. Meanwhile, distance between husband and wife grows beyond geography. When Elvis returns to Graceland, he senses a shift. The woman who once waited only for him now has other engagements, other plans, other conversations that do not begin and end with his name. Jealousy rises quickly in a man who is used to being the center of every room. He asks questions about where she has been, who she spends time with, what she does during the hours when he is not there. Answers do not satisfy him. Suspicion moves in where trust once lived. Arguments follow a familiar pattern. He raises his voice about loyalty. She raises hers about respect. He reminds her of the life he has given, the roof over her head, the security and status that come with being Mrs. Elvis Presley. She reminds him of the nights she cried in rooms full of luxury, because the man she loved was present only in body. Some nights end with cold silence, two people lying in the same house but existing in different worlds. Other nights end with apologies and promises that feel softer than before, less convincing, worn down by repetition. The relationship with Mike Stone crosses from emotional support into romance by many accounts. This step does not come with fireworks or movie-style declarations. It comes in quiet moments where she realizes that she feels more safe and heard with this man than she does with her own husband. It comes with a cost she understands very clearly. Shame and relief wrestle inside her. Part of her cannot believe that the girl who once stared at Elvis across a room in Germany could one day seek love elsewhere. Another part cannot believe that it took this long to look for air outside the cage. News of the affair eventually reaches Elvis. People talk. Phone calls are made. A name is mentioned more than once. The discovery strikes his pride like a hammer. This is a man who has been desired by entire crowds. The idea that his own wife could feel drawn to another person shakes that image at its roots. Reactions vary in the stories told later. Some say he raged. Some say he broke down. Most agree that anger and hurt mixed in a way that made the house feel unsafe on certain days. Threats, even if spoken in frustration, cut deep. Hints that he could have the other man harmed, later softened or dismissed, leave a chill in the air. Priscilla hears not only the words, but the level of fury behind them. The line between hurt feelings and dangerous decisions suddenly feels thin. Fear joins the list of emotions that now live at Graceland. This fear is not only about physical harm. It is fear of what fury can turn him into. It is fear of raising a child in a storm where love and rage sit so close together. Conversations about separation finally come into the open. She tells him she cannot live like this any longer. The confession does not arrive in one dramatic speech. Fragments spill out over days and weeks. She speaks about the lack of partnership, about the affairs, about the control, about the simple fact that her heart cannot keep stretching to cover every wound. Elvis listens, yet the reality does not sink in at first. To him, their bond feels eternal, no matter how badly they have hurt each other. He believes time will smooth the edges. He believes she will calm down. He believes the idea of leaving Graceland is a temporary storm. Offers of gifts and changes appear. Cars, trips, promises of new houses, new routines, less pressure. Priscilla hears them and hears something else beneath them. He is still trying to fix a broken marriage, with things he can buy and stages he can control. The courage to ask for a legal separation grows slowly. She begins to imagine a different life. An apartment that belongs to her. A schedule that is not built around tour. A chance to raise Lisa in a place where her mother does not feel like a permanent guest. First small steps toward that future happen quietly. She takes Lisa away for short visits more often. Those short stays outside Graceland feel strange at first, then peaceful. Noise from the gate is replaced by ordinary city sounds. Meals are simple. Laughter feels less guarded. Each time she returns to the big house, the contrast becomes clearer. One world is heavy with expectation and history. The other holds space for growth. There is still love in her for the man who changed her life. There is still gratitude for moments when he showed tenderness and protection. That love, however, no longer feels like enough reason to keep sacrificing herself. A day finally arrives when the decision shifts from a private thought to a plan. Legal advice is sought. Friends are trusted with pieces of the truth. A place to live is chosen, not far from Memphis, yet far enough from the shadow of the mansion. The moment to leave must be chosen carefully. Any scene in front of staff or friends will turn a painful act into a spectacle, something she desperately wants to avoid. The safety and emotional state of Lisa come first in every calculation. An evening comes when the house is quieter than usual. Elvis is out. The staff move in a kind of slow motion, sensing tension that no one names. Priscilla walks up the stairs and checks on her daughter. Breathing is soft and steady. A favorite toy lies beside the pillow. The sight almost breaks her resolve. Life for this child has always included Graceland as a backdrop. Walls carry her laughter. Floors have felt her steps since before she could speak. Leaving means changing that picture forever. Tears form, yet the choice holds. Staying would teach Lisa a different lesson, one about accepting pain as the price of love. The mother decides that is not a lesson she wants to pass down. Suitcases appear on the bedroom floor. Hands fold clothes with a calm that feels unreal. Pieces of a life go into bags, dresses, shoes, small items that mean comfort. The task seems both massive and strangely small. An entire decade reduced to what can fit in a few cases. Employees notice movement. Eyes meet in hallways. No one interferes. Many have seen arguments come and go. Some assume this is another episode that will resolve itself as the others have. This time is different. Priscilla carries one case down the stairs and places it near the front door. The same threshold that once represented arrival now stands as the line she has decided to cross. Silence in the hallway feels almost holy. Every sound, every breath takes on weight. A car has been arranged quietly. The driver is someone she trusts, someone who understands the importance of discretion. Engine noise from outside has not yet reached the house. There is a brief pocket of time between decision and departure. That pocket closes quickly. Elvis returns earlier than expected. The front door from the back parts of the house opens. Footsteps move down the hallway with their familiar rhythm. Smell of cologne and stage sweat mixes with the scent of the house. His eyes fall on the suitcase first. The rest of the scene follows. Her posture, the way she stands near the door, the fact that Lisa is upstairs, not by her side. Initial reaction is disbelief. He has seen this style of scene in his own life before, yet always as a piece of drama that ends with someone staying. Jaw tightens. Questions rise. Anger, confusion, and fear crash together behind his eyes. Words form on his tongue, but not the ones from earlier years. Control does not fit this moment as easily. Charm feels weak. A very simple truth pushes forward. The woman in front of him is not making a threat. She is leaving. Section 2 ends with that realization landing in his chest, heavy and unavoidable. The next words he chooses at that door will not only shape that night. They will echo through the rest of his life, and through hers, long after the lights at Graceland go dark. Elvis stares at the suitcase as if it has appeared out of thin air. A moment earlier, the hallway felt like every other night at Graceland after a show, full of silent luxury and the faint echo of distant applause still humming in his body. Confusion hits before anger. Shock travels over his face. Then something darker rises behind his eyes when he understands that this is not a threat, not a scene, not an argument that will end with slammed doors and soft apologies. "What is this?" comes out first, rough and defensive. A second question follows without words. "You are not really doing this, are you?" Priscilla feels her throat tighten. That simple question carries the weight of 10 years. Her hands want to shake, yet she holds them still, fingers wrapped around the handle of her own life for the first time. The answer has been building inside her for months. Instead of a speech, she offers a quiet truth. She tells him she cannot live this way any longer. She explains that love has never been the problem on her side. The problem has been the loneliness that lives right beside his fame. Silence fills the space between them. He is a man who has spent his whole adult life controlling rooms with charm, jokes, and sudden storms of emotion. None of those skills work on the woman in front of him now. Anger grabs at him. Accusations come to his lips. Questions about loyalty, about Mike Stone, about promises made in churches and hotel rooms press against the back of his teeth. Another impulse appears underneath the anger. Fear that she will walk out if he pushes too hard holds him in place. For a rare moment, he chooses something he rarely offers first: honesty instead of control. Words do not come out neat or polished. He tells her he knows he has failed her. He admits that the pills, the tour, the other women, all of it has taken more from her than he ever truly faced. He confesses that he does not know how to stop the machine that his life has become. The sound of his voice breaks through her defenses in a way shouting never could. Finally, she hears the man from Germany, the one who once sat with her in a small living room and talked about fear, not just glory. That man has been buried under rhinestones and expectations for a very long time. Part of her wants to fall back into that memory. Another part remembers the nights in this same house when she cried in silence while he laughed in other rooms. Memory fights with survival inside her chest. He steps closer. Eyes search her face for any hint that this can still be reversed. If he can just find the right words, maybe she will put down the suitcase and climb the stairs instead. Promises start to tumble out. He can cut back on shows. He can spend more time in Memphis. He can change the way they live here, the way staff move through the house, the way decisions get made without her voice. Those offers might have saved them years earlier. Tonight they feel late, worn thin by too many broken attempts that began with the same hope and ended in the same patterns. Priscilla listens to every word. She hears real pain in his voice. She also hears the fear of losing not only a wife, but the image of family he has used to soften his public story. The role she plays in his legend sits beside the role she plays in his heart, and that mix has always been dangerous. A sentence forms that cuts through both their defenses. She says she still loves him. She also says she loves herself enough now to know she will disappear if she stays. Those two truths do not cancel each other out. Instead, they sit side by side, heavy and unmovable. Elvis feels the floor shift beneath him. All his life, love has been something he could win back through grand gestures, through gifts, through a song sung with tears in his eyes. This moment refuses to bend to that old script. He reaches for the one place he has always carried his emotions when they feel too big, the place no one can interrupt, the stage in his mind. A line surfaces from somewhere deep inside. He tells her that he will always care for her, that he will never stop feeling tied to her, that no matter where she lives, part of him will stand at this door with her. The exact wording will never be known to anyone but them. People close to them would later describe the mood rather than a perfect quote. What they recall is a mixture of pleading and acceptance, a man trying to let go without admitting that letting go is happening. Her heart breaks again. For years she had begged for this kind of open admission, for a confession that he had hurt her and did not want to lose her. Now that it arrives, it comes at the price of finally leaving. She thinks of Lisa upstairs. She thinks of the woman she will be if she stays. She thinks of the example she will set if she walks. A choice this large never feels clean. Guilt and love and anger all pull in different directions. In spite of that storm, her hand tightens around the suitcase handle. Steps carry her closer to the threshold. He watches each inch, as if he could stop the process by sheer will. Every instinct in him wants to order her to stay. Another, quieter instinct understands that he has done too much damage to command anything. The doorknob feels cool under her fingers. Metal separates one life from another. She turns it slowly, giving both of them time for one final question, one last chance to retreat. No one speaks. The quiet says everything. She opens the door and steps through. Air outside Graceland feels different from the air inside. Night hangs over the lawn, over the gate, over the road that will take her to a smaller life with a different kind of weight. Tears blur her vision, yet her feet keep moving. The car waits. Luggage goes into the trunk. A quick final glance at the house freezes in her memory, the columns and windows reflecting years of love and struggle. Inside the hallway, Elvis stands alone. Staff shift in the shadows, unsure whether to approach or disappear. No one can soften what has just happened. No one can turn this into a temporary scene. Grief does not hit him all at once. Shock dulls the edges for a while. Thoughts turn quickly toward what can be fixed, what can be spun, what can be arranged legally to soften the blow. Lawyers enter the picture soon after. Conversations about separation, custody, and property begin. Papers formalize what that single walk through the door has already decided in both hearts. Musicians notice a change when sessions resume. Voice becomes more raw, more willing to lean into pain without hiding it behind swagger. Songs that address broken families and regret appear in the setlist and in the studio schedule. Separate Ways comes to life during this period. Lyrics speak of a child caught between two homes, of a couple who once believed their path was forever and now travel different roads. Each line cuts close to his own story. The man in the song watches his family leave and realizes that fame cannot repair what pride and neglect have broken. Always on My Mind follows with a different tone. This time, the voice belongs to someone who admits too late that he failed to give the tenderness that was needed. The chorus carries a simple apology. If there was any way to show love more clearly, he would have done it, but he waited until after the loss to face that truth. Recording those songs is not just another day at work. Studio walls hear a man working through his own regret in the only language he fully trusts, the language of music. Take Stretch On. Emotion thickens the air while tapes roll. Fans who listen in those years hear beautiful performances. Many hear their own heartbreak in these songs. Very few know how closely the lyrics match the reality of his marriage ending, how the man behind the microphone is singing about a woman who has just carried a suitcase through the door of his own home. While he pours pain into melodies, Priscilla builds a different kind of life. An apartment replaces the mansion. Furniture is simpler. Noise from fan is replaced by ordinary sounds from neighbors and streets. Days revolve around Lisa in a more grounded way. School runs, appointments, and bedtime stories still fill the calendar. There is also room now for her own growth. Classes continue. Work possibilities appear. She is no longer only a figure in someone else's legend. Loneliness does not vanish just because the gates of Graceland are behind her. Nights arrive where the silence feels too wide. Memories creep in, of laughter in those halls, of early mornings when he was gentle and funny, of moments when his arms felt like safety rather than a cage. Regret visits both sides. He wonders if there was one argument he could have handled differently. One night he could have come home instead of staying on the road. One moment when putting away the pills, and the pride might have changed the outcome. She wonders if there was one more chance she could have given, one more conversation she could have had, one more way to reach him before the door. Courthouse days formalize the end. In 1973, the divorce becomes official. Cameras gather outside. Reporters frame the scene as the fall of a fairy tale. Headlines speak in simple terms about a story that has never been simple. After the hearing, they walk out together and hold hands briefly for the press. Smiles reach their mouths, not fully their eyes. He says that they leave as friends, and that he will always love and respect her. Public word soothed the crowd more than the two people who have actually lived this story. Lisa becomes the living bridge between them. Time with her splits between two homes. Holidays require coordination. School events pull them into the same rooms now and then. Every shared moment contains echoes of the life they once planned and lost. Graceland changes after her departure. Rooms feel emptier, even when full of people. Dacre grows more extravagant in some areas, as if brighter colors and stranger design choices can distract from the quiet upstairs, where he spends more and more time alone. The upstairs floor gradually becomes his private world. Few are allowed in. Curtains stay closed more often. Televisions provide constant company. Food and medication arrive on trays instead of shared tables. Music still visits the house, yet very often as old recordings rather than fresh creations. The man who once transformed personal pain into songs that moved millions retreats deeper into himself. That night at the door does not leave his imagination. It sits as a marker in the timeline of his life, a point that separates hope from resignation. Priscilla carries the memory as well. Years later, when she speaks about their relationship, she describes it as a story of deep love and deep hurt, not a simple tale of villain and victim. She insists that leaving was not about lack of love, it was about survival. Two lives move forward along parallel tracks. He remains at Graceland, the world visiting through records and tour and rumors. She builds a career, raises their daughter, and slowly begins to stand as her own person in the public eye. Night comes to both homes. One man sits in an upstairs room, wrapped in the glow of television screens and haunted songs. One woman stands sometimes by a window, thinking about a mansion on a hill and a younger version of herself, who once believed that love alone could hold everything together. The door at Graceland remains in place, silent and solid. On the outside, it looks like any other entrance to any other large house. On the inside, it holds the imprint of one walk that changed the course of two lives, and gave birth to songs that still carry that heartbreak into the present day. Years later, The Night at the Door still lives inside everything that followed. In public, the story of Elvis and Priscilla has become a kind of modern myth, retold in films, books, and fan debates. Behind those versions stands a quieter reality, shaped by two people who carried their shared past in very different ways. After the divorce, their lives moved onto separate tracks, yet neither one ever fully escaped the other. On his side, the loss of his marriage settled into the same place as childhood grief and career pressure, a wound he tried to manage through work and routine. On her side, the decision to leave became a reference point for every choice that came later, especially once she stepped into a new role the world did not expect. When Elvis died in 1977, shock rolled across the planet. News anchors spoke in solemn tones, radio stations replayed old hits, and fans gathered at Graceland as if drawn by instinct to the place where his story felt most real. For Priscilla, the moment cut far deeper than any headline or tribute could show. Grief for a former husband is complicated. Memories of hurt and distance sit next to scenes of kindness and intimacy that outsiders never saw. She had left him to save herself, yet she had never wished him gone from the world. Funeral arrangements and estate issues forced her into the center again. The man who once took care of everyone financially had left behind a tangle of debts, contracts, and obligations. Graceland itself stood at risk, more burden than treasure on paper. Responsibility could have passed to lawyers and accountants. Instead, Priscilla stepped forward. A woman whom many still saw only as Elvis's ex-wife began to think like the guardian of a legacy, not just a chapter in it. In the early 1980s, she helped guide the decision that changed everything, opening Graceland to the public. The house that once served as a fortress against the outside world became a museum where fans could walk the same halls she once crossed in silence. That choice saved the estate financially and turned the mansion into a permanent symbol. Visitors tour the rooms now and see gold records, flashy outfits, and familiar photographs. Very few realize that the person who had once packed a suitcase by that very door later signed papers to protect the building itself. The place she had to escape became the place she ultimately preserved. Her relationship with the myth of Elvis grew more complex as the years went on. Interviews allowed her to share stories that humanized him, stories that showed his generosity, his insecurity, his humor, and his flaws. Books added more detail, offering her own perspective on life with a man the world believed it already knew. A pattern runs through her words whenever she talks about the marriage. She refuses to reduce it to a simple tale of cruelty and victimhood. Statements often carry two truths at once. He loved her and he hurt her. She loved him and she reached a point where staying would have broken her. That Night at the Door hangs between those truths. For many people, the most heartbreaking part of a breakup is the absence of love. In their case, the pain came from the fact that love remained, even as every other structure around it failed. Fans sometimes ask why she never remarried. Different explanations circulate, yet one reality stands clear. No other relationship ever replaced the impact of that first one. Living through such an intense partnership, then choosing to leave it, reshaped her understanding of what commitment costs. The role of protector did not end with safeguarding the estate. As Lisa grew, motherhood required a careful balance between honoring her father's memory and telling the truth about his struggles. Shielding a child from harsh gossip while helping her understand the man behind the legend demanded wisdom that came from hard experience. Later, as films and series about Elvis began to reach new generations, producers came to Priscilla for input. Some projects she supported, others she questioned, depending on how they handled the line between drama and respect. Each portrayal risked turning a complex human story into a simple, entertaining script. One image repeats in her life more than any other: the gates of Graceland. Early in her story, those gates meant entry into a dream. On the night she left, they marked the exit from a life that no longer allowed her to grow. When tourists pose for photographs there today, they rarely think about the woman who once drove through alone with tears on her face. They see the gates as an entrance to Elvis's world. She likely sees them as both entrance and exit, a reminder that some doors must open in both directions if anyone inside is going to survive. Music adds another layer to the legacy of that door. Songs like Separate Ways and Always on My Mind still play on radios, streaming services, and tribute stages around the world. Every time those tracks reach a listener's ears, they carry echoes of regrets born in that house. A person hearing the lyrics today might think of their own breakup, their own divorce, their own missed chances. Underneath those personal associations flows the story of a man who finally found words for his failures only after the woman he loved had walked away. Art became his way of speaking to her across a distance he could no longer cross in person. Priscilla has said more than once that he could be gentle and vulnerable in private. That vulnerability rarely reached him at the right time. The combination of fame, pressure, and old beliefs about masculinity made it hard for him to apologize before damage hardened into distance. The night at the door forced that vulnerability to the surface. For a few minutes the king vanished, and only the man remained. He had no stage to stand on, no microphone to hide behind, only the person who knew him better than anyone else ever would. If his music is a kind of letter, then that moment was the draft. Years of unspoken remorse poured into melodies peppered with simple phrases of regret. Listeners hear a singer pleading with an unnamed woman. People who know the timeline understand how specific those pleas really were. Legacy is not only about what a person leaves behind, but also about how the people who loved them choose to tell the story. Priscilla's choices shaped the version of Elvis that younger fans inherited. She could have painted him as a monster. She chose instead to present him as a flawed, gifted, wounded human being. That choice does not erase the harm she lived through. It does, however, reveal something about the way she carried the memory of that night. Instead of turning the door into a symbol of pure betrayal, she turned it into a lesson about boundaries, survival, and the price of ignoring pain for too long. In later decades, her own public image shifted again. Acting roles, business ventures, and appearances placed her in the spotlight in her own right. Reporters still linked her name to Elvis whenever she stepped on a red carpet, yet her presence carried a quiet authority that came from weathering storms few others could imagine. Tragedy returned to the family more than once. Elvis's sudden death had been the first earthquake. Years later, the loss of Lisa Marie deepened the sorrow that already lived in those memories. Mother and daughter had both been tied to Graceland in ways no stranger at the gate could fully understand. In moments of public grief, people turned to symbols for comfort. The mansion, the music, and old footage became places where fans tried to process their feelings about the family. For Priscilla, grief had no simple symbol. It sat inside details. A stairwell, a laugh, a hand on a doorknob. The door at Graceland stands now as part of the tour. Guides talk about history, decor, and famous visitors. Very few talk about that one night when a young woman stood there and chose to walk away from a legend in order to protect the small, still voice inside her. Viewers of this story might be tempted to pick sides, to decide whether Elvis or Priscilla was more at fault, more noble, more tragic. Real life rarely fits into such neat categories. What happened at that door was not a scene with heroes and villains, but two human beings facing the consequences of years of choices. Love without boundaries becomes possession. Fame without humility becomes illusion. A house without room for honest conversation becomes a stage where everyone is always acting. In the end, the legacy of that night is not only about heartbreak. It is also about courage. Priscilla found the strength to step through. Elvis found, too late, the courage to admit his part in the loss. Their story warns anyone listening about the cost of waiting until someone stands at the door to speak the truth. Graceland remains, glowing at night, welcoming millions. Visitors walk in with ears full of songs and leave with heads full of images. Very few of them realize that the most important moment in that house may not be framed on any wall. It lives instead in the space between two people, in the silence before one of them said goodbye. When you hear those aching songs in the future, you may picture that hallway. A suitcase on the floor. A man finally speaking from the heart. A woman listening, tears in her eyes, knowing that love exists here, yet understanding that love is not enough to stay. The next time someone describes Graceland as a dream, you might remember that it was also a place a young woman had to escape. Her legacy is not only that she stood beside a king. It is that she found a way to step away from his throne and build a life on her own 2 feet, while still protecting the castle that had nearly swallowed her. If you had stood where Priscilla stood at that door, which life would you have chosen? The glittering world that millions worship, or the quiet path where you might finally hear your own voice again? Share your thoughts in the comments. For more untold, human moments from behind the gates of Graceland, tap like, subscribe, and stay with this channel. There are many more doors in Elvis's story that the world has never really opened.